Okay, so picture this if you can. A secret city.
Mm.
But not just any city, right? This one was designed specifically as like a fortress for a nuclear war.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, and buried deep, hundreds of feet deep, under this massive, seemingly solid sheet of ice. It sounds like something out of a movie, doesn't it? Like pure fiction.
It really does. Straight out of a Cold War thriller.
Exactly. But here's the kicker. It wasn't fiction. Not at all. This was a real top secret program right out of the, the height of the Cold War tensions. So today we're doing a deep dive into something called Project Iceworm. And honestly, it was a program so bold, so ambitious, it still kind of boggles the mind even all these decades later. But it was real.
Absolutely real.
And its story, well, from how it started, this kind of fantastical idea, to how it ended, quietly sort of swept under the rug. Or under the ice, I guess.
Yeah.
It holds this really deep, almost poetic irony for us today. An irony that ties straight into, well, climate change.
That's exactly right. Our mission here in this deep dive, it's got a lot of different parts. We're going to dig into the incredible engineering they tried to pull off. I mean, pushing the limits of what anyone thought was possible in like one of the harshest places on Earth.
Right under the Greenland ice sheet.
Precisely. And we'll explore what life was really like for the people who live there, in this hidden underground world. The human side of it all.
Beyond the tech and the strategy.
Exactly. And crucially, we have to look at the profound, almost unbelievable irony of how it all ended up. Or maybe how it's not ended up. We're using declassified documents, detailed historical accounts, even recent scientific studies to piece together the whole story. You'll hear how this basic assumption they had about the ice being permanent, stable, got completely overturned by the environment itself. And how today's climate reality is, well, bringing it all back to the surface, literally.
Yeah, and that's what we try to do here on the deep dive, right? We take all these sources, articles, research, notes, everything, and we pull out the key stuff. The surprising bits, the moments that make you go, uh-huh. So you, listening, can get the whole picture pretty quickly without drowning in details.
Get you up to speed fast.
Right. Informed fast, maybe with a bit of a chuckle along the way. So, okay, let's unpack this. Our story starts way back, Cold War, the frozen frontier, you could call it, where this idea of a city under the ice first really took shape. Project Iceworm, top secret U.S. Army program, born during that super tense standoff, U.S. versus the Soviet Union. And the goal, audacious doesn't even cover it. They wanted to build this huge mobile network of nuclear missile launch sites, not on land, no, under the Greenland ice sheet.
Which sounds insane.
It does. But the aim was strategically vital back then. Ensure a second strike capability. Basically have nukes that could survive if the Soviets attacked first and then launch back. Total retaliation.
Mutually assured destruction, yeah.
Exactly. It was about cementing that nuclear deterrence, but doing it somewhere nobody would expect on a scale that was just, mind-boggling.
And the politics around this, well, that was incredibly complicated, especially because Greenland is Danish territory, right? Even though the U.S. had a big military footprint there already.
With Thule Air Base and all that?
Precisely.
Yeah.
So the actual details of Project Iceworm itself, they were kept classified for decades. It only really came out properly in January 1995.
Wow, that recently?
Yeah. It surfaced during an inquiry by the Danish Foreign Policy Institute, DUPI, they call it. They were digging into the whole history of nuclear weapons in Greenland, basically. And that investigation was sparked by newly declassified info about a B-52 crash back in '68 at Thule.
Ah, the one with the nukes on board.
That's the one. Which, completely contradicted what the Danish government had been saying for years about no nuclear weapons being allowed there. So it was a whole can of worms. But here's the really crucial part. While Iceworm was secret, the thing they built first, the cover project, Camp Century, that was discussed with Denmark. They approved Camp Century.
Okay, so Denmark knew about Camp Century, but not the real reason for it?
Exactly. They were told it was a research station, basically. They had no idea it was the proving ground for this massive hidden missile base plan, a very carefully constructed deception.
And that cover story, Camp Century, it launched in 1959 and actually got quite a bit of press, surprisingly.
Yeah, it wasn't totally hidden.
No. The U.S. Department of Defense, when they talked to the Danes, they framed it as like a test bed for building affordable military outposts on ice caps. The official story had 3 parts. Test construction techniques in the Arctic extreme.
Makes sense.
Figure out the problems of running a semi-mobile nuclear reactor there, which was super advanced tech for the time, and support scientific experiments on the ice sheet. So, to the outside world, it looked like this pioneering science base. Pure exploration.
A very convenient cover.
But underneath, it was all about paving the way for those hidden missiles, a potential game changer in the Cold War.
Mm-hmm. And the location they picked for Camp Century was pretty strategic, too. High up, about 6,600 feet elevation, northwestern Greenland.
So pretty remote.
Very remote, but also, crucially, only about 150 miles from Thule Air Base.
Ah, so logistics, supplies, people.
Exactly. Thule had been active since '51, so it was the lifeline. Remote enough for secrecy, close enough for support. And yeah, like you said, it wasn't totally secret. It was even featured in the Saturday Evening Post magazine in 1960.
A big mainstream magazine back then.
Huge. So that article and the general buzz around it really helped sell the science-based story. Kept people looking the wrong way, away from the military purpose.
And when we say city under the ice, they really meant it, didn't they? The scale of the construction.
Oh, absolutely. The core of it was this network of 21 trenches. But not just ditches. They cut these massive tunnels into the ice and snow.
How did they keep them from collapsing?
They covered them with these arched roofs, steel and snow construction, created these long sort of cavern-like tunnels. And inside those tunnels, they put up prefabricated buildings.
Like actual heated buildings.
Yeah, barracks, labs, facilities, a whole self-contained environment, totally cut off from the surface. And the size, the total length of all these tunnels added up was 3,000 meters. That's almost 2 miles.
1.9 miles of tunnels under the ice. That's incredible.
And inside this underground maze, they tried to make it, well, livable. They had a surprising number of facilities, not just basic sleeping quarters. There was a hospital.
Makes sense, isolated like that.
A shop, for essentials, maybe some small comforts. A theater. Can you imagine movie nights under the ice?
Wow, must have been vital for morale.
Absolutely. And even a church, a place for reflection, community, all of it buried deep down. It was a complete, though, profoundly isolated and artificial world.
How many people lived there?
The population was around 200 people usually. Mostly military personnel, some civilian contractors, all living and working in this incredibly unique hidden spot.
Empowering it all. That was pretty groundbreaking too, right? The nuclear reactor.
Oh, yeah. That was a huge deal. From 1960 to 1963, Camp Century got its power from the world's first, essentially, mobile or portable nuclear reactor.
Portal, the nuclear reactor.
Yeah. Designated PM2A, designed by Alco specifically for the Army. Think about that, a nuke plant you could theoretically deploy to a remote, frozen, and as they found out, moving environment.
That's some serious engineering for the time.
A massive leap.
Yeah.
Really shows that Cold War belief in technology solving anything.
Yeah.
And water, you ask, is also ingenious. They used something called rod wells, basically heated probes that melted the glacier ice around them.
Creating their own water source.
Exactly. A constant supply. And they were careful, too. They tested the water for germs, even things like the plague bacteria, apparently. Which tells you something about the extreme conditions they were preparing for. I mean, the sheer ambition. Just to think up, let alone build and try to run a self-sufficient city underground in that kind of place. Staggering.
Audacious is the word.
It really is. And it says so much about the Cold War mindset, doesn't it? The length these superpowers, the U.S. and the Soviets, were willing to go. Pouring resources, pushing engineering, science, human limits, all for what they saw as security, for deterrence.
Project Iceworm really embodies that, doesn't it? That can-do, almost damn the consequences spirit of the era, attempting the impossible. Which brings us to the people, the human story. You've looked at the accounts, right? What was it like for those 200 souls living down there? Beyond the cold, what did it feel like? Buried under ice, artificial light only. For months sometimes.
Yeah, that's a critical piece. Often gets overlooked in the tech and strategy talk. The psychological side. I mean, think about it. No real sunlight, no weather changes marking time, no natural sounds except maybe the ice groaning and the machinery humming.
Constant artificiality.
Totally. They had lighting systems set up to mimic day and night, but it's not the same, is it? Reports, personal stories, they often mention this deep sense of isolation, disorientation. Some folks struggled with sleep patterns, even with the scheduled lights. The idea of outside just became abstract.
Wow. So how did they cope? Did they have, support systems or routines?
Well, the documents point to a big emphasis on routine, military structure, discipline. And fostering community was key. Those things like card games, movie nights, church services, they weren't just extras, they were vital.
Keeping people sane.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Coping mechanisms against cabin fever, isolation. Some people did okay, rose to the challenge, like the camaraderie. Others really struggled with being in that, quote, tin can under the ice.
Sounds incredibly tough.
It was. There wasn't a lot of formal psychological support as we think of it now, but building those social spaces shows they knew it was a pressure cooker. It's that classic story of human resilience in extreme places, but also the sheer strain of living against your natural instincts, trusting the engineering completely.
It really does put it in perspective. Okay, so they built this incredible city, a marvel of engineering, a product of intense Cold War drive. But as we often find on these deep dives, right, the best laid plans, they run into reality, especially when you're fighting the environment itself.
Exactly. And this is where it gets really interesting scientifically, because that core assumption they started with, that the Greenland ice cap was basically this huge, stable, unmoving platform.
Solid ground, just made of ice.
Right. That assumption was completely wrong. And it wasn't just wrong, it was fundamentally misunderstood, because honestly, the science of big ice sheets was still pretty new back then.
So what did they find out?
Well, the science done at Camp Century itself was key. They learned that snow and ice, they look solid, sure, but on a large scale, under immense pressure, they behave as viscoelastic materials.
Viscoelastic. Okay, break that down for us.
Think of something like very, very thick honey, or maybe silly putty. It seems solid if you hit it fast, but over time, under pressure, it flows, it deforms.
Ah, okay. So it's not static.
Not at all. Ice sheets are constantly, slowly moving, flowing outwards from the center under their own immense weight, like an incredibly slow, gigantic river of ice. It moves on geological time, sure,
Yeah.
but even over just a year or two, that movement adds up, especially when you build tunnels inside it.
And the impact on Camp Century, what did this slow flow actually do to the base?
It squeezed it relentlessly. Over just 1 year, that outward creep of the ice caused the tunnels, the trenches, to narrow. The walls would literally bulge inwards, the ceilings would sag.
Not good if you're living inside.
Definitely not. It wasn't like a sudden collapse, more like this slow, crushing pressure from all sides. The engineers were constantly fighting it. It wasn't a stable foundation. It was like being in a slow-motion vise made of ice. And they had hard evidence of this happening pretty quickly. By mid-1962, remember, they only started digging in '59, so just 3 years in.
Yeah.
The ceiling in the reactor room.
The reactor room? That sounds critical.
The most critical part, its ceiling had dropped by 5 feet, 1.5 meters.
Whoa.
Yeah, they had to physically jack it up, constantly lift it with supports just to keep operating. Imagine that work, just fighting to keep the roof up over your nuclear reactor. It showed this wasn't a small problem, it was fundamental.
But the real proof, the thing that sealed its fate, came from the scientists there, right? The ice cores.
Exactly. The geologists working at Camp Century were drilling deep down, pulling up these long cylinders of ice cores, and analyzing those cores, the layers, the deformation. He gave them a clear picture.
And what did the picture show?
It showed the glacier was moving much, much faster than anyone had thought. Faster than the initial calculations allowed for. The data was undeniable. At the rate the ice was flowing, those tunnels, and crucially, any future missile launch stations, they'd be crushed, unusable, in maybe just 2 years.
2 years after all that work.
Yeah, a devastating finding for a project meant to last decades. So you see the engineering problem, right? It's huge. How on earth do you build a fixed permanent structure for military use inside something that's constantly moving, constantly squeezing?
You can't, really, not with the tech they had.
Exactly. It's like trying to build a subway tunnel inside a river of molasses.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work long term without insane, constant rebuilding. The very ground beneath them or around them was flowing away. The whole concept was flawed at its base.
But there's a silver lining here, scientifically speaking, isn't there? Those ice cores weren't just bad news for the Army.
No, not at all. That's one of the fascinating twists. The scientific knowledge gained from those cores was groundbreaking for glaciology, the study of ice. Well, they were some of the very first deep ice cores ever recovered. They gave scientists this unprecedented window into past climate conditions, atmospheric composition, and crucially, how these massive ice sheets actually behave over time.
So data we still use.
Absolutely. Some of those cores, or the data from them, were still being used by climate scientists as recently as 2005, possibly even later, providing valuable long-term climate data. So this secret military project, ultimately a failure for its intended purpose, accidentally gave science this incredible gift.
Wow. Military failure, scientific success. That's ironic.
Very. A classic example of unintended consequences in research, you could say. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? What if they hadn't figured out the ice movement so quickly? Right there on site.
Yeah, what if?
How much further would they have gone? How much more money, effort, maybe even risk to the people there before the ice just won?
Yeah.
before something catastrophic happened.
So the science, in a way, maybe prevented a bigger disaster down the road.
You could argue that, yeah, it put the brakes on this runaway train of ambition before it completely derailed. A reality check delivered by the ice itself.
So the ice had its own schedule, didn't care about Cold War strategy, and that unavoidable truth that the ground wasn't solid forced them to rethink everything. So, faced with that, what happened to Project Iceworm's grand design? How did it all fall apart?
Well, yeah, faced with that undeniable proof the ice moves, it crushes things, the whole grand plan for Project Iceworm just hit a wall, a very cold, very real wall.
The basic premise was gone.
Totally. That idea of a stable ice sheet, poof, disproven by their own research on site, science trumped strategy, basically.
And you really grasp the scale of the ambition and maybe the delusion when you look at the plans for the full missile network. Not just Camp Century, but the whole Iceworm system. There's a declassified Army report from 1960, Strategic Value of the Greenland Ice Cap. It lays it all out.
And how big was it supposed to be?
Get this, if they'd fully built it, it would have covered 52,000 square miles.
52,000 square miles. That is roughly 3 times the size of Denmark, the country that owns Greenland.
Under the ice, that's almost unimaginable, trying to maintain that.
Utterly unimaginable. A sprawling, shifting underground nuclear fortress covering an area that vast. Built on a flawed understanding of the ice. It was pure engineering fantasy, really.
And the details within that fantasy were just as wild. The actual launch complexes, the floors were planned to be 28 feet down, 8.5 meters below the surface.
The protection.
Yeah, some shielding. And the missile launchers themselves, even deeper. And they pictured clusters of these launch centers spread out every 4 miles or so across that huge area.
Making it hard to target.
Exactly. A dispersed, hidden, supposedly survivable setup.
And to keep it survivable and mobile, the plan was just relentless construction. They were going to dig new tunnels every year, constantly expanding, constantly moving things around.
So the missiles wouldn't be in the same place for long?
Precisely. After 5 years, the goal was to have thousands of possible firing positions, and they planned to rotate several hundred missiles among them, making a first-strike knockout almost impossible.
What kind of missiles?
They planned to use a modified version of the Air Force's Minuteman missile, a shorter 2-stage version, and the Army even had a proposed name for it.
What was it?
The Iceman.
Iceman! Chillingly appropriate.
Isn't it? Fits the whole scenario. But just think of the logistics, the constant digging, the engineering challenges besides the ice moving.
Mm-hmm.
It was monumental.
So the timeline of how it shut down really shows them grappling with this impossible reality. It started subtly. Late July 1963, the plan was just a routine shutdown of the nuclear reactor for maintenance.
Standard procedure.
Right. But then, instead of firing the PM-2A reactor back up, the Army made a big decision. They decided Camp Century would only operate in the summer from then on.
Acknowledging the year-round difficulty.
Exactly, that powerful nuclear reactor. It was never turned back on, a huge sign things were winding down.
They did keep the camp sort of going in 1964, but just using its backup diesel generator, which was way less practical, way less powerful for a place like that.
Not the high-tech vision anymore.
Not at all. And that summer, 1964, they removed the portable nuclear reactor entirely. Took it away. That was pretty much the nail in the coffin for the big dream.
So when did they finally leave?
The final evacuation was in 1965. Project Iceworm, the secret missile base plan, officially canceled, and Camp Century itself closed down for good in 1966. Just left there to be buried by the snow.
It's such a stark story, isn't it? This massive geopolitical ambition, this drive for ultimate Cold War deterrence, crashing headfirst into geology, into the simple fact that ice flows.
Yeah. The sheer scale of the Iceman network they dreamed up shows how intense that Cold War pressure was. They'd try anything, build anything.
A city under moving ice, sure, why not?
Pretty much. But all that drive, all that clever engineering, it couldn't beat basic physics. Nature didn't care about the Cold War. And there's that other huge wrinkle too, remember. Even if the ice had magically stopped moving, they still hadn't gotten Danish permission to put missiles there.
Right. Denmark had a non-nuclear policy.
Explicitly, including for Greenland. So while Denmark okayed Camp Century as a research base, putting hundreds of nuclear missiles there, never asked, never approved, it was a direct violation of Danish policy.
So they were planning to just do it anyway, sneak it past their ally.
It certainly looks that way. It speaks volumes about the secrecy, the assumptions, maybe the arrogance of Cold War planning. The U.S. strategic need was seen as overriding an ally's own stated policy on their territory.
Wow. So it wasn't just fighting the ice, it was potentially fighting politically with Denmark, too.
Absolutely. If the ice hadn't killed it, the politics might have. It was facing hurdles from nature and from international law and diplomacy, as a whole layer of potential conflict to this already wild story.
So the city died, the project was canceled, and Camp Century was abandoned, left to be buried, forgotten under the snow. Or so they thought. Because now, fast forward to today, and there's this unexpected, really ironic final chapter being written, one that connects that Cold War relic directly to our climate crisis. Yeah, back in 1967, when they decommissioned Camp Century, the thinking was pretty simple, almost casual in hindsight. Just leave everything there, the buildings, the tunnels, all the waste.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly. The assumption, the confident belief, was it would be entombed forever by perpetual snowfall. The Greenland ice sheet would just keep piling snow on top, burying it deeper and deeper, locking it away safely for eternity, a frozen time capsule.
That tidy assumption got blown out of the water by a big study in 2016, a really important piece of research. Using modern climate models, much better understanding of ice dynamics than they had in the 60s.
What did the study find?
It found that the specific part of the ice sheet covering Camp Century, it's likely to start melting significantly by the year 2100. If current climate trends keep going, that is.
Melting, not perpetual snowfall.
Nope. Melting. A complete reversal of the original assumption. It shows how profoundly a warming planet is changing even the most seemingly permanent landscapes, literally uncovering the past.
And the consequence of that melting, it's not just archaeological curiosity, is it? It's a potential environmental problem.
A serious one.
Yeah.
When that ice melts, yeah, the old structures, the tunnels, the buildings will merge. But it's not just inert metal and concrete. It's all the stuff they left behind with it. Biological waste, chemical waste, yeah, radioactive waste.
Oh, wow. Still there.
Still there. Poised to re-enter the environment as the ice retreats. And that could cause major disruption to the local ecosystem, maybe further afield. And we're talking significant amounts of hazardous stuff. The study estimated around 200,000 liters of diesel fuel.
That's a lot of fuel.
A huge amount. Imagine that spreading across the tundra or into the ocean. Then there are PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls.
Nasty stuff, right? Doesn't break down.
Exactly. Highly toxic. Used in old electrical gear, paints, things like that. They persist for ages, and they bioaccumulate, build up in the food chain. Really bad news for Arctic wildlife.
And the radioactive waste from the reactor.
Remnants from its operation. Maybe contaminated materials, coolant, who knows exactly what state it's in. But releasing that into the fragile Arctic environment as the ice shield disappears could be devastating. Contaminated water, impacting wildlife, maybe even indigenous communities downstream.
And this is where, for me, the irony just hits so hard, it's almost chilling. You have this base, right, designed from the ground up to survive nuclear war, a global man-made catastrophe, the ultimate apocalypse scenario of the time.
Built for the unthinkable.
Exactly. And now, decades later, it's being threatened by another global crisis. Climate change, also caused by human activity, but in a totally different way. Slower, more insidious. The very ice, the cold, that was meant to hide it, protect it forever. That's now becoming the agent of its exposure, its undoing. A base built for one apocalypse, revealed by another. The Cold War secret is now a climate change headline. It's incredible.
It really highlights how these assumptions we make about the natural world, perpetual snow, stable ice sheets, can be completely overturned by larger global changes. Especially changes we humans are driving.
Yeah.
And it makes you think, doesn't it? What else is out there? What other Cold War secrets, what abandoned industrial sites, military dumps, are lurking under melting glaciers or thawing permafrost around the world?
Hidden legacies waiting to emerge.
Could be countless sites.
Yeah.
Forgotten problems from the past suddenly becoming very present-day environmental threats. Things we thought were buried forever, now demanding attention.
And the potential impact? Releasing that stuff, the diesel, the PCBs, the radioactive material into the Arctic, that ecosystem is already under massive stress.
Extremely fragile, yeah. Very sensitive to contamination.
So you could see cascading effects, right? Poisoning local wildlife, contaminating water, impacting the indigenous communities who depend on that environment.
Absolutely. And it's not just a local problem. Greenland's location, ocean currents, this stuff could spread. It becomes an international issue, affecting fisheries, marine mammals across the Arctic, maybe beyond. It turns this old, buried Cold War relic into a modern global environmental headache.
A problem humanity basically walked away from.
And now nature's bringing it back, right to our doorstep. This whole story, Project Iceworm, From the crazy ambition at the start, the quiet failure, and now this climate change twist. It really does capture what we try to explore in these deep dives, doesn't it?
It really does.
It's got human ingenuity, the raw power of nature, and these completely unexpected long-term consequences of our actions, our assumptions.
Definitely. So just to wrap up the main points we hit today, we talked about that incredible, almost sci-fi ambition of Project Iceworm, the amazing engineering of Camp Century that served as its cover, then the hard reality, check the moving, viscoelastic ice that doomed the whole thing.
Couldn't fight the flow.
Couldn't felt the flow. And finally, that really poignant, sharp irony. The toxic legacy left behind, meant to be frozen forever, now threatened by climate change, becoming a problem for us today.
And there's so many layers here to learn from, right? It connects Cold War history, deep glaciology, complex engineering challenges, and now frontline environmental science and even international relations.
All in one story.
Yeah, it's a powerful reminder, I think, that knowledge isn't just about knowing facts. It's about understanding connections, seeing how past actions echo into the future. This story connects a lot of dots in a way that's, frankly, pretty sobering.
It absolutely is. Puts a lot of things in perspective.
Yeah.
So as we finish up today, maybe here's something for you, our listeners, to chew on. What other hidden histories, what other things we assumed were permanent or gone forever might be starting to surface because our world is changing so rapidly?
Good question.
What might we have buried, physically or metaphorically thinking it was dealt with, that nature itself is now going to bring back, force us to confront? It makes you wonder about the unintended consequences lying just beneath the surface, doesn't it? Well, we hope you keep digging into things that spark your curiosity, just like we do here. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring.